Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for One Piece chapter 957, and oh boy, oh fucking boy, was this a chapter. Like, honestly, I think I can say right now that this is probably going to be one of my longest chapter reviews of One Piece, like, ever. Because I have a lot to talk about in this chapter, and I'm sure I'm not even gonna be able to cover like everything that went on in this chapter. Like this chapter was loaded with stuff. Like it was loaded with so much world building, just so much amazingness that that I don't think I'm even gonna be able to cover everything. Um, but I'll try and cover as much as I can, or at least as much as I've jotted down in my notes here. Um, so yeah, One Piece chapter 957 review. The chapter starts with a conversation between it's basically Fujitora and Sakazuki in terms of the seven warlord system, like from just being abolished now. And on the surface, when it came to Fujitora's like whole side of the conversation, he seemed grateful, but didn't say much more beyond that. And the thing is, after reading like last week's chapter, I think he actually did have a bigger role to play in this than what's been shown. Because if you think back on what he said on Dressrosa after his argument with Sakazuki, it was clear he wanted that pretty much official freedom from the Marines. And with the reveal of Sword last chapter, the pieces start to fall into place. Like I think he was I think at some point in his I think at some point after joining the Marines, I think it was more than likely he probably became almost aware of the Sword organization, and he saw them as almost like a pretty much way in which he could probably achieve this. So at some point, I think he more than likely probably he probably sought out their pretty much help in the past at some point. Um, Now, here's where things get interesting because, as I said, I pretty much read last week's chapter multiple times, and one thing definitely popped out, which again it ties back to Drake, like and the fact that pretty much Drake is one of these undercover pretty much sword operatives. It occurred to me the fact that it occurred to me then Drake isn't the only one who's deep undercover. Who else do we know who's basically supposedly a former Marine and joined a pirate crew? That's right, Aokiji. And I not only think he's basically the one that Fujitora had been working with this entire time in order to dismantle the Seven Warlord system, but I wouldn't be surprised if Aokiji is in some way like pretty much the leader or the mastermind behind is the leader, mastermind, or even just like a pretty much high operative in the Sword organization as an organization. And the thing is, when it comes to Aokiji being a member of Sword, it makes so much sense because before we were pretty much all scratching our heads as to why Aokiji would pretty much even think of pretty much joining like the Blackbeard pirates. We basically know we've gotten to know Aokiji as one of the more at least respectable Marines, and the one who basically has an honor code and a moral center to him. So it just at the time it just seemed out of place that Aokiji would end up joining like the Blackbeard pirates of all people, but here it makes so much sense. He basically joined. It makes so much sense as to why if he was a member of Sword, it would make so much sense as to why he would join the Blackbeard pirates to begin with. And now with these two chapters, it actually gives us that context that that Aokiji has more than likely joined Blackbeard pirates in order to dismantle them from within. and it's probably the same thing of what Drake is doing with Kaido's crew as well. So yeah, with Sword, they're pretty much with Sword that they're appearing as an organization that's going to actually help in order to dismantle the Yonko almost. Um, Now, the so and a final little thing a final little detail to point out in that whole conversation between Fujitora and Sakazuki is that Fujitora, he definitely hit a nerve when he was saying that Sakazuki has been the only one who's been unaffected by the warlord system, and judging by our dear Fleet Admiral's silence, I don't think that's the case. I think at some point in the past, I think he probably had a bit of a run-in with one of the with basically a warlord of the sea. Now, whether or not it was any of the current like ex warlords, that pretty much remains to be seen. And we have to wait and see as to where Oda is gonna take this, but in either case, I'm definitely hoping it leads down the path of one hell of a backstory in terms of Sokka's in just to get to know who Sakazuki is as a character, because I'm not gonna lie, even now, of all the Marines, when it comes to Sakazuki, he is the one that I still carry the least amount of sympathy for, and large in part that is because I don't know, like, obviously we haven't gotten to know a whole lot about any of the Marines really, but with Sakazuki, we haven't even gotten to know what exactly his backstory is. Like what caused him in order to become the man and the jaded, like the man who's so jaded and focused on like this doctrine of absolute justice. Like what pretty much gave birth to that. That's the one thing I desperately want to know when it comes to Sakazuki for sure. And just knowing his backstory, it could definitely change my. I think it could definitely change a great deal of my perception on Sakazuki as a character. Like I said, I'm slowly kind of getting a little bit of sympathy for him almost, but it's still a very slow process, and knowing Sakazuki's backstory, it could skyrocket my sympathy for him from like down here maybe to all the way up here. I'm just saying that right now. So yeah, Sakazuki's backstory I think is one thing we definitely have to look forward to for sure. Of course, the epic reveals don't end here, boys and girls, because we finally get the reveal of who Rox is. You pretty much know the guy who was who was mentioned with like what was it 50, 100 chapters ago, and yeah, the short version of who Rox is that it like from what we gather from this chapter is that Rox is essentially you could say that Rox is the architect that not only created that not only created like pretty much a pretty much pirate era that, as said, existed for 40 years, but so in that sense, he also laid the groundwork in order for Roger to build on his own. Like in a lot of ways, like Roger's era, it was built on top of Rox's era of like Roger's era of piracy was built on his own era. And even though they were enemies, in the end, both Rox and Roger both still had a hand in creating the current pirate era as many of the big players we see today, as many of the big players we ended up seeing today, like Whitebeard, Blackbeard, Shanks, Big Mom, Kaido, they were all underlings who served under them. So yeah, it's like both Rox and Roger, even though they were enemies, that they pretty much still like pretty much formed what we consider to be this pretty much current pirate era. They're the ones who created it. It's it's really kind of incredible, and really, and in a certain way, it really does kind of put like Prince Roger's whole execution and him saying, and him starting the current pirate era a lot more into context too, because again, even though he and Rux had kind of had unintentionally built this kind of current pirate era together, they like Roger, all he did, he just kind of lit the fire under everyone, but they pretty much had already kind of had already whether intentional or not, both Rox and Roger had already created the foundation in order for Roger to in order to set the flame on the current pirate era is what he did. So yeah, that's like what more can I say? Like, it's this reveal is like, it's so fucking insane. It puts so much into of what we know of that day when Roger was executed. It puts even that into context of saying that, yeah, like Roger, he pretty much had already created. He and Rox had already created the foundation for the current pirate era. All he had needed to do was basically light the switch on it, was flip the switch on it. But by saying, you want my treasure, go find it. That's really all he had to do. Like, he already created it, so it's like, oh man, yeah. On top of that, we also learned that Rox's full name is basically Roxy Zebek. That and that that Rox himself, he was, so yeah, Rox is a holder is the holder of the Will of D, and that he was almost like pretty much the father of the. I don't want to say he was the father, because I don't think that pretty much the D specifically started with him, but he was definitely one of the major players of those who held the Will of D, and because of that, he was such a powerful figure that was a holder of the Will of D, that Garp actually had to team up with Roger, another holder of D, in order to defeat him. That in itself adds an interesting element to Roger's history, because I don't know how canon this is to the main story, but that little mini episode of Roger facing down Shiki in their final battle does add that extra layer that Roger's whole journey towards becoming Pirate King after defeating like Rox was essentially based around fighting, and in some respects just erasing Rox's era of piracy and creating his own on top of that. Again, going off what I said. The part I'm curious about with this is how the team up of Garp and Roger happened, because I find it hard to believe that Roger would willingly fight in order to protect like celestial dragons. So obviously Garp had to do something in order to convince Roger to in order to go along with that. So yeah, I don't know if it was in the chapter. There was like I said, there was a lot in the chapters to digest. So I don't know if it was in the chapter, but if it wasn't, I definitely want to get a little more. I want to know like the backstory on that one for sure. And yeah, hopefully we'll like next week or something. Because yeah, Oda, like, I'm not sure how you packed so much good shit in this one chapter, dude. But you did. Again, I can't. I don't know how Oda packed so much good shit in this chapter. It's kind of eerie to. It's kind of hard to. It's really insane to say, but it's kind of insane to say. But I think once again, like, One Piece has taken top spot of favorite manga of 2019. Like, it's probably in my number one already, if not just close to the number one. Like, it has, at this point, I think it has to be number one, honestly. And to a lesser degree, we also get the reveal of why Garp had refused to take the title of Admiral in this chapter, which is definitely, again, it's one of the smaller reveals, but considering what he experienced on God Valley, it wasn't hard to understand why. Even if, like, when you look at with Garp, he is a member of the Marines. That part is clear, and as joining the Marines, I think he and and even saw that they wanted to bring a little dignity to those who carried the will of D, but the thing is, even Garp. Even Garp, he can't fight. Even as a carrier of the will of D, even he knew he would cause problems beyond his control, and he'd probably end up going, if he were to become an admiral, he would he would have to serve the celestial dragons at a moment's notice. He would probably end up going into a similar rage, like what happened when he wanted to kill like what happened in Marineford when he wanted to kill like from Sakazuki after Sakazuki had killed Ace, because it's definitely building up that with pretty much the will of D. There's obviously this very deep connection to pretty much everyone. One thing I think this chapter did is that it definitely built up. I think that anyone who carries the will of D, that they're obviously, even if they're not directly related by blood, just by carrying that D in their name, there's obviously a very deep connection that they pretty much share with each other, and with that they share with each other as holders of the will of D in them. So yeah, and Garp knew that. Like he knew that. Yeah, he would end up. He would end up like from just doing what the will of D is supposed to mean. He would end up like fighting the gods. In this case, the celestial dragons. All right, so let's talk about the island that this final battle took place on. Because first, when I heard God Valley, I assumed that they were essentially talking about the island that would eventually become Marie Joie. Then Sengoku said the island disappeared. So using that and the little bits of information that were told to us about the stones, we can assume are the poneglyphs. I think what we essentially heard right here is not only how Raftel had come to be on the island, and can only be located through pretty much the road poneglyphs, but I also believe that if the government tried to cover this up, then this in itself proves that Raftel, that Raftel as an island, it not only holds the One Piece, but it also holds the key in order to discovering the island that started the Void Century, or is a smaller piece of the island itself that makes up the one that had sunk to the bottom of the sea, like during the Void Century. Like Raftel again, it was I think it was reinforced like early on in the series, but yeah, at this point everything connects to Raftel when it comes to the Void Century, I think, at this point. And yeah, we got a pretty big reveal of past and present bounties in this chapter, with, unsurprisingly, Rogers and Whitebirds being like the ones that pretty much tower over them all. And as said in the chapter itself, that the reveal of these bounties really reinforces just how integral a fighting force that the Seven Warlords were when combating the Yonko. Because pretty much now, with the Yonko being... With the Seven Warlords being dismissed, the world government's fighting force has been kind of cut in half almost. Like from just now with the Marines, what they're doing is they're scrambling it in order to find alternate ways in order to combat the Yonko. Pretty much now that the Warlords are pretty much just average pirates, and are just average pirates. Now, and I do like how, in a lot of ways, that this is actually forced. In some ways, I do like how this is actually forced the Marines in order to cope, and actually kind of like pretty much dig deep and actually like and find out like what it is that they pretty much need to do. Because as Fujitoda said, I think they had become a little too dependent on the Warlords almost. So now, the Marines are forced to take that extra step in order to become like the true, like almost the true, like the true like holders of justice almost, which in some ways also scares me, because I'm not gonna say that this will happen right away, but I feel this but I feel this, but and I'm not gonna. Now, one other thing I want to say about the. Now, I'm not going to say. Also, one thing I want to say is I'm not going to say this is going to happen right away, but when it got to the point of the chapter where it ended up showing us the bounties of the Yonko, and specifically when it made a point of showing Shanks's bounty, um, I feel that just by focusing on Shanks's bounty, I feel in a way that this does kind of expedite the pretty much death flag on Shanks at some point in the future. Like in a way I pretty much kind of got those in a way that I think Oda has been kind of building up the death flag a little bit, just pretty much from the simple fact that we learned that pretty much that Eustace that Eustace kid and the kid pirates were basically targeting Shanks with his alliance. But now I feel that this kind of like almost kind of shows that yeah, Shanks is probably gonna die at some point here. So but well, like I said, I don't know at what point it's gonna happen, but it probably will happen at some point in the future for sure. Now the bigger question here is whether or not it's gonna be Blackbeard or the Marines who is the bigger question of who's gonna kill him, because I don't. I honestly don't. I don't think that Eustace is going to be the one to kill him. Let's get real on that. Like the dude couldn't even fight Kaidos. Couldn't even survive against Kaido. So I have my doubts he can actually take out Kid. So he can that kid can actually take out Shanks. So yeah, I think at this point it's either going to be Blackbeard or the Marines who end up killing Shanks. I think it might be Blackbeard as that would more than likely serve like motivation in order for Luffy to actually go after Blackbeard almost. And Blackbeard is sort of end game almost in a way. Like Blackbeard is kind of like the goal is the golden line to is what the golden line was to Roger. Like Blackbeard is the Luffy's like arch enemy almost. Um On the other hand, I'm not gonna lie. This whole situation with Wano constantly being with Wano being constantly brought up in the meeting of the Marines, it kind of makes me think we might see the return of the Buster Call at some point, because as it was a throwaway line a bit, but as said, like Wano is basically an unaffiliated country. It's like a country that's kind of separated from the rest of the world. So that in itself, it does open the fact that at some point Wano might become the victim of a Buster Call, or at the very least a pretty much mass like invasion from the Marines. I'm not saying that's what'll happen for sure, but I'm definitely getting those vibes, especially with Sengoku's ominous line about how a lot of things are being brought back to Wano, especially with the real that Kozuki Oden was not only a part of Roger's crew, but also for a time he was also one of Whitebeard's commanders. Just like Rocks, he's at the center of everything now. So yeah, but yeah, guys, that's really all I've got for this amazing chapter. Like this was a fucking 10 out of 10 chapter. Just tell me in the comments below what you think. But yeah. If you enjoy the chapter, like, comment, if you enjoyed the review, like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, just tell me what you thought. Death Knight of Enemy, signing off. Later, guys.